thank you everybody for March's webinar. So we're going to slowly ease into this. We're either going to just do the introduction or covering the housekeeping items, depending on which slide we pull up here. Just a quick recap. We do these every month. We do this the second Thursday of the month, 1 o'clock Eastern. It's for 90 minutes to 2 hours. It's really two things. It's to support our installed base of customers. As people move around, they bring on new system admins. So we want them comfortable so they can continue to grow, make changes, tweaks, do the ongoing maintenance to their Issuetrak, as well as just the existing system admins, giving them peaking training, taking them to the next level. 2 hours is a big block of time, so feel free, bounce off. You can come back as time permits. Andrew in the marketing and product development departments is gracious enough to take these recordings and he breaks them into the sessions and puts them on our website. So at some point, guys, would you all go to Issuetrak.com and pull up the videos on demand? Just remind people where the webinars get posted to. If you have any questions, we ask that you use the Q&A link on the webinar. It's two things. We can answer it in there or bring it into the conversation as we're going. And we also get a report afterwards, so it's a nice way to make sure that we're following up on all those open items. So if we could use the Q&A, that'd be great. So today we're doing our 3 sessions. We're just changing the order a little bit. We're going to start everything on today's webinar is reporting. So we're going to start with Paul and Patrick presenting the 30-minute deep dive, really doing the best practices and tips and tricks on the reporting. And then Mike's going to do the 60-minute overview on it, talking about how Issuetrak uses the reporting functions for it. We also got a short 15-minute introduction on a new feature, and then we'll wrap up. If we haven't, if we run long on Q&A throughout the webinar, we still got a dedicated block of time so we can open it up for questions from there. Introducing the players here. For a lot of people, I'm your account manager. I'm one of a growing team in the sales department here at Issuetrak. I've done sales my whole life, so I really focus on the relationships. Next up, we have Mike Wright. He's our senior product engineer here at Issuetrak. He's bounced around. He's affectionately known as the Wizard of Odd. So if there's a way to get it done, Issuetrak, Mike is the go-to guy to make it happen for you. Next up is Paul Harris. Paul's the go-to guy. He's Mr. Web Form. Bring him into customer product calls all the time, taking those customers to the next level. And then our newest guy on the webinars, but by no means new to Issuetrak, Patrick Triscritti. Most of you all over the years have probably engaged him in the support department. He's got 15 years experience here. So he's one of the guys when we're upgrading those on-premise legacy customers. He really enjoys upgrading somebody from version 7 to 12.9 today. So I'll be in the background. I'll be picking up the Q&A, either answering them and throwing them up for the presenters. So with that, turn it over to Patrick and Paul.
All right. Well, thank you. I did want to say one more thing about Patrick. So many years ago when I started Issuetrak, Patrick had already been there for, I don't know, so many years, right? And a long time ago, he taught me how to do reporting, right? So I could take support calls, right? This is before I was ever a pro services guy or anything. So he has been doing this for a very long time. He's a natural choice here.
I did train Paul a long time ago.
So anybody that wants to complain to Patrick. Yeah, now Mike might have hired me, but you know.
I hired Patrick.
Oh, that's right. You hired Patrick. That's right. So long ago.
Back when Mike was the support manager.
Yeah, back when I had colored hair.
All right,
Patrick trained me as well.
If you want to go ahead and show your screen. I was going to have you do the driving for our little session here.
All right, so here
There
is
we go.
our reporting and issue track. Go ahead, Paul.
All right, so if you would take us to the first slide here.
Yeah,
And I wanted to stress, you guys know, because you've probably been to a webinar before for us, I always like to stress the background information. This is not new information that we just content that we just came up with for today's webinar. These tips and best practices, as well as step-by-step instructions for how to build reports and queries and how to use the report writer, all that stuff is already out there in our help materials, especially in the Help Center. And so for today's Patrick and my session, we heavily leaned on this article from our Help Center. And there's more than one way to get here. You can come out to issuetrak.com and come out to the Help Center that way. Or if you're inside of your Issuetrak site, just click on the circle with the question mark, right? That takes you directly to the Help Center, and you can search for any topic that's out there, any of the Help Center items that are out there. So this is where we're going for today. So if you miss that one little thing that I say, or like, what is he really talking about? This is a natural place to come and review the best practices and tips, as well as there's step-by-step stuff out here too. So Patrick, if you wanted to scroll down through that, show them what's on the article itself. If you could, there we go. Scroll down through it. Show them how long this article actually is, how much stuff is good content is actually there, right?
And Mike is going to go over the top of the article.
Yeah, he's going to cover more of the stuff at the top. We kind of wanted to show you some end result and give you, a lot of our customers already are using the tool and kind of already know what to do, but we wanted to kind of get into some best practices, get into the stuff that makes it work better. And I wanted to cover sort of the first best practices. It's not really written down here, and that's think about what you want before you start building a report writer report or a report writer query in Issuetrak. And what we're going to talk about today doesn't run counter to that, right? That's still what you need to do. You need to think about the data you want out. In fact, we're going to give you some tools to help with that, to help you think about what you want out of the site. So if you wanted to go to the next slide. So let's get into our first best practice here for the report writer in Issuetrak. And we're going to start with queries, because as you all know, right, we need to create a query first to get the data we want. And the first best practice is about using filters to limit the data in our report. Go ahead and run that first query if you would, Patrick. And I can't remember if you're still logged in. You might have to log out and log back in, something. You might have to go to that site again. Here, Patrick's going to resolve this quickly here. There you go. Now I want you guys to see the name on this query. It's, there we go. And if you would. So the goal for my query, what I wanted out was I wanted the average time open for help desk issues last year. Now, how good a job did I do of getting that in my data, right? I got 245 issues in the query, but they start 3 years ago, right? I didn't do a very good job of limiting that out, right? And you can see, the thought, and I've had customers that did this, right? They're thinking, well, I can just export it out to Excel and do all my manipulation out there, right? Well, if we use filters to limit the data, that's less manipulation you have to do. And you can do that once, then you can still take the report out to Excel and do any manipulation you want to, but you cut down on the amount of time and the amount of effort. Go ahead and show them what it looks like for just issues that were submitted last year. And you can see we went from 245 down to 79 here. All we did was add a filter that filtered for submitted on last year. That's it. Everything else is the same. All right, now, and that covers our first best practices. If there's questions, please put them in the Q&A. I'm going to move on to the next best practice from our article here. The next thing is about dealing with duplicate data. And we want to use grouping. When we create a report, we have the ability to group that report, and that helps us deal with the duplicate data. Patrick, you want to show them what we're talking about here? Sure. Run that before. Sure. And you can see, this is a report. If you read the report name, it's about tasks on project issues. So for every task, right, I use the tasks issues data set. Usually some of the information is about tasks and some of it's about issues. But for every task, I'm repeating the project name and the issue subject, and the issue number, right? And you can see that makes for a very hard to read report because your eyes kind of are drawn right to those first 3 columns, which is duplicated every time. Now, if we apply our best practice and group that data, you can see we end up with something that's a lot easier to read. Now the project names are all grouped and you see it once, and you can see that the issues that go with that are in another grouping. And then there's one particular issue and there's the tasks that are part of that. It really allows your eye to get to the right part of that report, right? Whereas before your eye was kind of stuck, pulled into those duplicated data. All right, let's talk about our next best practice here. Let's go to the next piece. Another thing that we find that our customers do in Issuetrak is they think that it's you're stuck with what you've got in the query and you've got to use the same stuff. One query always matches exactly one need, and that's not always the case. Go ahead and run the query I've got there. So you can see this was a goal that the help desk issue review here. I've seen customers do this before where they come in and run a report on issues last year, right? And they're going to review all of the issues. For that, they're going to go through and do a yearly review to see where they could improve or find trends, things like that. But then you have a need. Sometimes you've got a need also to see who you want to highlight things within this data. For example, go ahead and run our report 1 here. So I created a report, and that report I focused on the issue review by type. So I grouped it by type. And you can see the types are all grouped nicely. There's a footer with the data, right? How many issues and averages for the columns on the right there. So it makes it easier to focus on the data by issue type by cutting down on some of those columns from the query. Now this uses the same query we just looked at. It's just grouped and we dropped off some of the columns to make it easy to read. Now let's say we had the same query, the same data pulled out of the site, but we wanted to focus on common submitters. Go ahead and run the next one here. So with this report, it comes from the same set of data, but you can see we narrowed it down and focused on the submitter in this report. So we grouped everything by submitter and we left off the details. So all you get is the common submitters, the frequent flyers. And you can see that I kind of outstripped a lot of the other folks in the site here, right? I had 14 issues and it took an average of 170 days to resolve them, right? Now that's by submitter. So I'm going to blame everybody else on that one, but you can see it's a test site, it's test data really. Right, so you can see those both came from the same query, the same mother data. We just used the reports to focus the attention and look for what we wanted to look for, the trends we're interested in. And that came out in 2 very different report results. Okay, let's talk about using report descriptions now. It's another best practice. Go ahead and go to our report selection and click into one of the frequent submitters or the help desk review. And you can see at the bottom of this, the selection here, we've got a description. The description tells us who uses the report, why they're using the report, what fields are included. So all I really did, I just copied and pasted the column headings and took out the spaces, right? So I could get the fields included. And then I gave a quick sentence about who uses the report. We use this report to identify the submitters that take up most of our time, right? Take the most time on average. I probably could have done better with the description of the report, right? But you get the idea here that it actually works well so that you know before you run the report what data you're going to get out.
Hey, Paul?
Yeah.
I wanted you to see if you can answer this question. Ellen posted the question, says, does version 12.9 still have a 500 record limit for report output? Can you address that?
Sure.
Maybe Patrick, one of you two, but let's go ahead and see if we can do that.
Patrick's already got us to the right page. You want to take a swing at answering, Patrick?
Yes. So this is the report writer settings where you can set the number of records returned. So you can add in here any number greater than 0, but you can pretty much go unlimited with this number here, as long as you put 2 million, 20 million, shouldn't have any more than that, but the limit of 500 is not set. So you can set it yourself here under the settings. Also, you can just change the number of records printed per page and the number of records displayed per page. So you can go unlimited with both of these. You cannot go unlimited with the maximum number of records returned, but you could put in pretty much unlimited here as far as all the nines. So yes, we can go over 500.
Very clearly, yes, you can. I see there's another question there about it. You should have access to report settings if you've got administrator privilege.
Well, Ellen also asks, she's using version 10.3.2. She doesn't have the report settings. You should have the report settings. Those have been in every version pretty much from the beginning. So if Ellen, if you want to contact our support team, you can email support@issuetrak.com or give us a call. Phone number 757-213-1351.
There we go. And Patrick will be happy to help you. Well, any of the guys on support will be happy to help you out.
Oh, did I? Let's see.
I think we've got a few more best practices to get to.
All right.
So we were just at report descriptions, right? Query
Yes,
and
we
report
were.
descriptions. Let's talk about changing the default format and settings. So this goes back to that page, right? It was kind of right into our evil plan, right? So if we go back to the settings page where we were, you notice there's some formats when we're running Issuetrak reports. There's some general settings that we use for the different types of data that appears in these reports. And not only in addition to the number of records returned, you have control over those default settings right here. So if you know that you always want to see dates in a certain format, or you always want to see numbers, right? The issue number without commas in it, you can set that here. Or if you always want commas in the issue number, you can change that. The settings are what they say they are. If you know you always want the issue number to be left justified instead of right, this is where you'd come to change it. So there's a whole host of settings here for the different data types. And we recommend, if you're having trouble making your reports look good, you can come here and make a sweeping change to all of your reports at once. Now, one of the tips and tricks that Patrick's going to go through, he's going to show us how to change these defaults on a report by report level. Sorry. So what do I have left for the best practices here? All right, I got a couple more here. Let's talk about formatting on specific reports. Well, I guess I'm going to show you that, right? Go ahead and edit our report here. Now, I didn't keep the default setting on this report. If you notice, the page we were just on, if anybody was paying attention, the last login date here, right? The setting here for a date in our defaults is not to show the time. However, this report shows it, right? And we just looked at, Patrick just showed us the default. The default is not to show that time. So he's going to show us that is specific to time, but it is possible specifically in the report to edit the format of each column if you want to. And Patrick's going to go into a little bit more detail. I have the feeling that I know Mike does a lot of that in the reports we use for pro services. So I don't want to steal their thunder by going into the details of it. I promise you will see the details about how to do that though. And let's go to scheduled reports. Now, a lot of my customers, they go to the trouble of building a query. They figure out what they want, right? So then they build a query, right? Get the filters right, they refine it, get the filters right. Then you go to all the trouble of building a report that looks nice. You change the formatting, get it all dialed in. And think about the amount of work that could be, right, for getting data out. But then they think they're only going to use that once. But then they're stuck. The next time they need that same data, that same result, then they've got to go back in and run the report again, right? So one of the things that not a lot of my customers realize, or it's kind of I think it's an underused feature, is the scheduled reports, right? So once you build a report writer report, you can come in here, or Save Search. You can come in here and schedule it. Go ahead and edit any one of these. Let's show them the nitty gritty of this. So you see at the top, it's about choosing the type of report you want and the report name, the report itself. And then there's 3 output options, right? Which is actually more than you get from within the interface, right? You can do an export by HTML, by Excel, or by CSV. Now, I know Patrick's going to talk more about actual export formatting, but this makes for a very easy way to create a recurring report that you just receive in your inbox on a regular schedule, which is what Patrick's showing us right now. And you can see, you don't have to get that report forever. Say it's just something you're going to look at over 2 weeks. You could put in an end date right there. And then lastly, one of the things that my customers don't see when they click new, right? They start with the scheduled report, they click new. You don't see the report distribution until after you save the schedule, which is why I had Patrick edit an existing schedule. And you can see that right here. Here's who that report is going to be sent to. Now, there is a caveat there. You can elect to take the user's permissions into account and visibility when you send the report. Or you can tell Issuetrak to send them the same report that an administrator would get, ignore permissions, show them all records that would be in that query or report. And there's a way to do that when you click add recipient. I don't want to get too caught up in the details, but use scheduled reports if you're going to need that data on a recurring basis. All right, now that's the best practices. And I've asked Patrick, that guy, to talk about the tips and tricks, right? Because we kind of split this up into 2 pieces in the article. So Patrick, take her away, take us on home here.
So I'm gonna give the tips and tricks to y'all. These are something I see all the time. I've helped numerous clients out over the many years with the report writer, and a lot of good functionality out of there, but you really need to know the tips and tricks. First thing I get a lot of calls on is, hey, I want to report on an active issue type or subtype. Well, if we go in and we build a report, we cannot, when we look up an issue type, you're not going to be able to see inactive issue types. Let me just show you what that looks like. So, a lot of my clients will come in here, and issue number is the biggest one.
Issue type.
And issue type here. So say you just want the issue number and what types they are. We're going to go into the query filters here, and we'll filter by issue type. When you click this lookup, it's going to be only active issue types. So in order to get an inactive issue type, we need to go copy and paste. Let me show you how to do that. So we're going to go to administration and issue types. I'm just going to open this in a new tab so we can go right back to that one. Right here is all our issue types. It only shows by default the active ones. So we're going to show inactive here. You can see all the ones with the Y are inactive. So what we would just do is copy the screen text, issue type, go back here, paste it in, and save the filter expression. And all these filter expressions, if you know the exact name of the filter name that you want, you don't have to use the magnifying glass and look it up from the database. So that's the first tip I had for y'all. Next, it's a good thing to start with an example issue of like the ones you want to return. This is going to help you build what fields you want in your report. So we're just going to look at this issue. This is kind of meets the criteria we want. Say we're looking for everything with this project. Of course, we would want the project. You're also going to want to have the issue types, most of these fields in the overview. So you can look through here, subtype 1's not filled out. Maybe we're not going to pull that. Severity is not filled out. We're not going to need that. It's good to just look at an issue to kind of to prepare to build your query and what fields you want and maybe what data you want. Well, that one has that project and maybe it's everything assigned to this HD help desk assignment group. So it's good to have an overview. Also, when you're looking, we really don't recommend using descriptions and notes. We have that functionality, but when you return a report, it can cause a lot of data. So just to be mindful, you can always go back in and add fields or remove them if not needed, just to tailor it to get a more personalized look. So next one is use a naming convention. A lot of people go in and name it report 1. Well, you don't really know what report 1 means. So we want to have a good naming convention. So if we go back to our reports and our queries, you can see we name these March webinar, kind of give it a little description so you know what you're using. Also, we have a little tip or trick, a naming convention. Say you want to move, you will always want this query or report at the top. So you can, this is in alphabetical order, so you could give it a number. So say you put 1 in front of your query name or report name, it's going to bring that to the top. You can also use special characters. A lot of times we'll use the asterisk or the star and bring that to the top. Also, you can see down here, if you put a Z, it's going to bring it to the bottom. A better naming convention also. So at Issuetrak here in our support site, we have a lot of our users creating reports. And what we like to do is use our first name or our initials so we know who built that report just by looking at the name of the query or the report. So then we can go back, say, hey, Patrick, do you still need this report? Can we get rid of it? Because this list can get very long and convoluted. You're always scrolling through it. So if you know who actually created the query report, you can go ask them, hey, do you still need this? Or is this something we can get rid of to clean up our queries or reports? So that's a good tip and right there.
Patrick, what
Yes.
I've been suggesting to some customers is to put the name of the owner or the person who created in the description also, in case they don't want to mess up their reporting options. Because when you click on the report, you'll see the information in that description. So that's a good place for ownership also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we had one on here.
Mhm.
So
Well, that
yes,
one I put we,
you-
but you could have
you-
put somebody.
You
You
could
could
put
put-
Paul Harris or Patrick on there, and that way it's an identifier that doesn't affect your naming conventions that you're trying to use, like those March ones are. So it's another trick that we use. So I thought I'd mention that.
all right. Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
So we're going to go to the next slide. So renaming columns. So the column names are not set. We're going to go in, I think it's on this one.
Yep.
So when you come in here, we're going to edit this report. And you're going to see your selected fields. So this is going to be your column names by default. So maybe you want to rename them. We're going to go to the formatting section. And don't worry, Mike is going to discuss all these steps later, so I'm not really skipping over them. So say, hey, maybe we want to name this instead of locations, name, you want to name it just location. So you can actually come in here and edit each column to tailor what you want. Also, issue number. Well, if we're suppressing the detail and we're counting, you could name this issue count. It kind of makes a little bit more sense. So once you run the report, I would suggest maybe looking at the data and seeing what you need. It's always best to kind of run it and then tailor it and see if it looks good, and then run it and tailor it a little bit more to kind of dial in exactly the formatting and the data you want. So next one is displaying date and time. This goes back to this formatting screen. So we have all these different formats, and it goes by the value. It's value driven. So like assigned to is not going to have a date option, but all the date fields will have these different options. I think by default it's the short. Also, we can adjust the counts. So you can take out the commas if you need it, if you needed to put it into another program. So if we leave the closed on, the short, and we blank out this assigned to, we can actually see the actual times. It doesn't filter out the time. So we're going to save and run this. And you can see there's actually some open issues.
Well, it's signed on. They all show the time now. You can see
Right.
that.
So you can see the time, whereas closed on does not have the time. So you would need to blank that field out to show the time. All right, next one, exporting data. So this is a big one. A lot of people will say, hey, I want to email this to someone. So this is kind of the HTML format where you can click inside the product. If you choose, like we talked about scheduled reports earlier, if you choose a HTML format, you're going to get an email that looks a lot like this, where you can click in and go right to the product. We have the export to Excel feature, pretty self-explanatory. Click on it, all your data will be exported to Excel. We also have this export to CSV. This is fairly new to our product. We had a lot of clients asking, hey, can I get a CSV file where I can give it to one of my tech guys and they can actually get this data imported into other systems. So that's a big one.
Actually, it's really handy for integrating with business intelligence systems like Power BI or Amazon QuickSight. And we actually have a Help Center article that gives you an example of how the scheduled report can send the report as an attachment, but then you can create something that strips that attachment off and feeds it to Power BI or QuickSight. Take a look at that knowledge base article for more information about that.
And that's
Great.
one that we added into the scheduled reports, the ability to do an
Right.
hourly export. So
Right.
we now don't have to wait for another day to get the data. We can actually use scheduled reports on an hourly basis. It's a fairly, the increasing number of building of business intelligence software that's available to our customers really allowed us to go ahead and add that as a feature to accommodate
You can see it there.
the need for data that they had.
Correct. Yeah. So moving forward, we'll go to the next tip. All right. So view in full screen mode.
Yes.
This is through the interface. A lot of times we will run the report when we're looking at it. It's a little easier to view in a full screen mode. So we're going to run this. This wasn't a good example.
No, I think our login
You
login
can
usage
see what
report.
it does. Yes. So
That was a query, I think. Oh, active users and last password change
there.
right
All right.
there.
My eyes were going cross-eyed. All right. So we'll run this one and kind of see if we view in full screen mode. Gives us just a little bit better view in the web interface. So that's that one, and you can exit back. Right. And then creating summary reports. So suppressing the details. So this is where you can really impress a lot of people. Maybe your boss said, hey, I need all this data. And I just want the numbers. I don't want any of the details. So what we've got here is a report. And you can see I have the detailed report. So what I'm going to do is show you how that is formatted. I'm going to go ahead and edit that. And you can see we have our selected fields that we want. We group it by submitted by. We're going to show the header and footer. I'll show you what those are after we run the report. So here's the suppressed report details. This is an unsuppressed report. So you're going to get all the details laid out for you. So we're going to save and run this report. Once this report is run, you're going to see it's going to start with submitter is actually, this one is actually blank. This is what happens. This is what happens if you delete a user. Every issue needs a submitter, but if you delete a user, which we do not recommend at all, we always recommend inactivating users, you're going to have blank data in your site. So
this is what happens when you use test sites.
This is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't have nice things, right?
Right. We have a null there. So this is actually pretty good tip to not delete a user.
Yeah.
just inactivate them because you want that historical data. But you could see the account and user and the details of each issue. So we had more fields. We could see the subject and maybe the issue type as well. But we can, so these are all the details, and you can see the header and the footer. So here's a header. And then here's the footer, always has the counts. So the footer's usually more important than the header, but you kind of want to break it up. So you can actually see, especially if you have a lot of data, you can see where it starts and stops. So now what we're going to do is going to go to the suppressed. So you can see how we also have a naming convention. We have two reports of the same name. One's just detailed and one is going to have suppressed data. So if we edit this one, we've got the same query, of course, the same fields, everything's the same. What I did is remove the header, because when we suppress the details, it's going to duplicate data. So now we suppress the details, and every other setting is pretty much the same. And we're going to save and run. Now we have all the information, very concise, very compact, easy to read. We get a lot of people really thank me for this, because they're like, this is exactly what my boss wants. He doesn't want the details, or they don't want the details. Just give me the data. And this is pretty powerful right here, just to be able to say, hey, how many issues were submitted, what were the average days open for those. So, and I believe that is the last tip. Yep.
Is that our last tip and trick?
Yeah. And
There
if
we go.
anyone has any questions, if you can't think of them right now, you can always contact the support. You might get me, or you might get one of our other awesome tech support people. I know I've looking through the list of attendees. I've helped many of y'all. So if you have any questions, just feel free to give us a call.
Well, thank you, Patrick. That was awesome. You can guarantee, I can guarantee a return engagement for you. We're going to need you for a lot of webinar sessions in the future. I can guarantee it. You did too well.
Right.
Thank you so much for helping me out with the tips and tricks and best practices. I think, are we ready for a break, guys, or do we want to forge ahead? Mike, what do you think?
It's up to
I think we
Mike.
can forge ahead. Actually, today we're kind of we're running on time. Unless some panelists have an objection, I think we're just going to forge on ahead instead of having that 5-minute break that we normally do.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
Okay.
so I think we're
So-
good to go. We're going to pass this over to Mike.
All right, Patrick, I guess it's my turn.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you for allowing me to have some time. My topic today is working with the professional services side. I want to kind of take the tricks and tips that Patrick and Paul have showed you and show you some of the ways that I have used reporting in order to help us manage the professional services department. I thought a real life environment would be nice to be able to show. And of course, I have done my best to redact any customer information. I won't be showing any queries that has any customer information in it or any reports. I've already modified and hid those. So I'm trying to keep all of that out of the way. And actually, the majority of my reporting that I'm doing is numbers. We're trying to pull numbers of things that we're trying to do, the service that we're trying to provide, what type of service, how long it takes us to provide services. So I'm going to show you how we actually built that within here. And one of the things that's a little bit different about the professional services side is that we use one of our modules. It's our billing module, because what we end up doing is, I'll show you, is we use billing line items in order to determine the service type. And I'm going to show you how all that's built. I'm going to show you how we've structured some of our issues in order to provide data, not only for scheduling, but also for putting month-end reports and weekly reports in to give to management. So we're going to go through this a little bit and show you how things work. So I'm going to begin here by going into the submit page. So I'm going to go here and go to submit, because I think you need to start to see the source first, because you have to understand your data structures and what data is available when you go to do reports, because you want to have a purpose behind your report. So here I'm going to go in and build a jumpstart. So I'm going to go and jumpstart. I can type, and here's a consulting jumpstart. And we have all of our data. Now, the data that's in here is a combination of data that, of course, identifies the customer. They identify the information like the service. We use our class functionality to separate data, because this is a site that sales and professional services share. So it's two different types of services going on: sales inquiries, sales requests, customer updates. All of that is actually in the same site as the professional services request. The professional services requests then are kind of broken up into 4 service types that we deal with. Paid services. things you pay us for to provide. We're consultants. We live and breathe off of the money that we earn from selling our consulting time. Sometimes it's on the Jumpstart, which we help you to consult to and train you to how to use the product. A tune-up, which is a service that we provide when we want to go in there and help a long-standing customer maybe look at how they're using the product, or even a short term, they want to go back and say, did we set this up right? Can we improve it? Can we make use of new features? Some of those things are what tune-ups are all about. And then we have things like consulting hours, managed services, where we actually help you actually do work. We have some customers that we do work for directly on their site. We'll enter data for them. We help them where they pay us in order to do work for them and help them manage sites. And of course, we have things like our web forms, where Paul is helping customers build a web form, or we're providing a web form. And he and the data services team are working together to provide you with that particular product. I also have goodwill items. Now, what's a goodwill item? Tony gets a customer and he's got a problem. So Tony says, hey, Mike, contact this customer and talk to them and see if you can resolve their problem for them. Well, we're not going to charge you for that. Tony, out of the graciousness of his heart, is saying, I am going to give you time in order to help keep you as a customer. We want to have a business relationship built where we are working together as a team. Or the support team, they'll get a call. It's a non-technical call maybe, and they need to go ahead and get some assistance from the professional services team in order to help that customer. So they'll send an issue over to the professional services team and we'll do a consultation with them. Normally it's a 30-minute consultation. We can go ahead and do that. And then we can go ahead and help the customer out or provide resources to the support team to get them on the right path to solve the problem. Either way, it's a customer engagement that helps us become more helpful to our customers. And we want to help customers out to continue to have you use Issuetrak and hopefully make you find it as a useful product in your business. And then there's the internal stuff. As we all know, you do have to do projects. You have things that your manager asked you to do. There's reporting that I do, scheduling that I do, that's really not related directly to keeping that customer happy, but it's operational items that I handle. So I'm tracking the time with that. So I know how much time I'm spending doing that versus how much time I'm spending with customers. Dan wants to keep me engaged with customers. The more I can be engaged with customers, the more I can help Tony either renew customers or to go ahead and get new customers. So that's what Paul and I do. So we put that into 4 separate areas. Of the ones that I deal with daily is mostly going to be the goodwill, the paid, and the web form. And mostly I deal with the paid and the goodwill because I'm scheduling those all day long. That's a lot of what I do these days is I do a lot of scheduling and reporting. So I'm going to show you how I do that because it has to do with essentially an operational report that I use every day. And I've got a couple of them I'll show you as an examples. Of course, then we categorize the type of work through our issue types and subtypes. And I use that for reporting information because as you can see, we have all different types of different issue types in here according to the usage. If I go into jump starts, then I can tell how long the jump start is, whether we're running a promo on jump starts or things like that. If I change this over, say to a consulting, so I'll switch this over and you see I've used a prefix to help us with it. But if I'm doing a goodwill consulting, well, where did it come from? I may want to know what source of these goodwills. So I'll look at here and I'll say, did it come email directly to support? Did a customer contact me by phone? You know, did the marketing team something over? Did I get the request from the sales engineer? Is it a sales lead opportunity? Those are different information that I can provide reporting tokens on and see how many issues we have in those different areas. So down below that, of course, we're looking at call and call spread. And then this is interesting because I've got an ability to do a related issue. If we sell a web form, a lot of times we're selling a new customer, a jump start, and a web form. So that's 2 separate issues that we track, and they're related to each other because usually you're doing them in hand a lot of times. So if I have 2 issues that are related to each other, I'm going to use the associated issues user-defined field to associate the jumpstart to the web form and the web form to the jumpstart, so that when Paul is doing the jumpstart in the web form, he can look at both of them and knows that he has two issues to deal with. Or if he's doing the web form, then maybe he wants to go back and hit the jumpstart and schedule that. So he can go back and forth very quickly and know the two issues that are related to that one sale. And if Tony wants to go in and take a look at it, because he's the sales engineer on this, then what happens with him is he may want to say, hey, there's two issues out here. And we've got to make sure that we're tracking that web form as well as getting this jumpstart complaint. Or the customer may contact him, what's going on with my web form? What's going on with my jumpstart? Then he can go in quickly and understand that they are really two issues in here. And then we have the linking criteria here. So this is a hyperlink. Well, what I do is we have a hyperlink in our support site and a hyperlink in our corp site. They're two separate sites. So what happens is that if support asks me to do something, I'm going to send the issue over using the email issue and email it into our professional services mailbox. It's going to create an issue for me to schedule, and I am going to schedule that issue and then provide a consultation service to that customer. Well, I want a hyperlink that shows me the linking criteria from the support issue from the corp issue and the corp issue back to the support issue. So because they're in two different websites, I use this particular functionality to provide me with a visual clue that, hey, and a visual easy for me to go back and forth, because I may update the corp site issue and then come back and update the support issue and close it because I'm done. So, or I may decide to go ahead and close the support issue and then go ahead and schedule only on the corp site issue. It just depends on the circumstances of the engagement that I need to provide to my customer. And then, of course, responsibilities. We're assigning issues out here. This is sent to the scheduling team, because if we're going to create a brand new one, it's going to go to the scheduling team, which is going to notify me to contact you to schedule something. And then this is most of the scheduling data that I deal with. The main thing with me is every engagement has some sort of an expiration date, maybe 6 months out, maybe a month, and maybe a year. We put an engagement and expiration date is because I can't chase you forever. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm going to chase you about 6 months. If I can't schedule the engagement, I'm going to close the engagement, or I'm going to put it into a place that we're scheduled later. It just depends on what we do. The follow-up dates tell me when to contact you again. And I'm going to show you how I use that, because what I do is I use this for a daily scheduling report. I get a report every day that's dependent upon follow-up date today. So the criteria that Patrick was talking about, that is the criteria. It emails to the scheduling group, which is me right now, or Paul. It's me and Paul, actually, and Taylor. I think all three of us get it. But essentially what happens is they get that email, and then I go to the email, open it up, and I schedule the events for that day. And then I move the scheduling date out from that point to the next time I need to contact you in case you don't get back in touch with me. And then when I do schedule it, I remove the follow-up date and I add a schedule date, so that a sales engineer such as Tony or my managers look at it, then they know that if it doesn't have a follow-up date and it's open, it should have a schedule date. And it should be something that way we know that our issues coming into the professional services team is being handled in an appropriate manner. It's either getting attention to schedule or it's already done. So that's the way I'll look at things. And I'm going to show you how that works on the issue hub, especially in a few minutes. Then, of course, we have the ability to do things like on paid things. We need to go ahead and we'll have a month. When is the service month going to occur? When I'm going to do that? I can associate it with a project and do other things. Of course, I've got an overview. I've got feedback. Is if I'm engaging with that customer, then I can go ahead and provide feedback. The customer complains about something, or they have a comment about the product. Then I can create a report for everything that's in this particular field. So I'm looking for a report that has a query filter built on product and feedback, not blank. And I've got a date on it. So it would be for last month. And I actually have a feedback report that I create like that. And I'll be able to use that in order to get good feedback and provide it both to the marketing team and to others. And of course, then I have my functionality in here for the tasking to complete it. So now the understanding here is you have data, and the data. Now I need to report on it. So if I go and look at a particular issue in here and I say, okay, I'm going to submit this and I'm going to pull this down here as a jump start. Let's see, what I'll go to PS jump start again. And I submit the issue. Actually, let me see, let me look at this again. Because there are other information that's down here that might be financial in rated. So I may have financial data in here. I may have licensing data, site data, product data. So it's all different types of information for me to report off of. If I'm going to lean a lot on the financial data to let me know how many hours were sold, how many have been used, how much invoicing needs to be done, what's the invoice to recognize. So this was important to us because it says, okay, if I need the finance team to recognize data, recognize value, then I'm going, okay, amount to recognize is how many hours of service we provided, what's the value for it, how many hours of service have been recognized by the finance team. So I use this for billing on a monthly basis too. And the idea is for all of our service to be used to match up whatever was invoiced. So it just defaulted in. So that's good information. The reason I wanted to show you that, because now I'm going to show you how the report writers and some of the other tools within Issuetrak can be used in order to leverage and manage a department like this. I'm going to start really with the Issue Hub, the newest feature in Issuetrak. In Issuetrak, one of the things that I did is I created 3 tabs to recognize most of the work that needs to be done by the professional services team. These are available to all users that have access to the corporate site. And then when I click in here, it shows you all of the issues that are within the paid services, the goodwill, or the web forms. And as I said, one of the things that I do daily is I come in here to the follow-up date and I'll sort this data A to Z. Because the first thing I want to do is I want to see things that don't have a follow-up date. Do they have a schedule date? What's the follow-up dates? Have they passed? Are they active? So what items do I need to contact today? And it's going to be these. So it's going to be the ones for tomorrow. So the 12th. So I've got 2 items probably it should come up on my report for tomorrow. I'll contact those 2 customers and I'll schedule whatever, I'll try to schedule with them. If I see that there is something that's already scheduled, like here, I could go in here and sort this data Z to A and see the schedule dates. I know we have 2 events scheduled today. I know there's 2 yesterday, 1 today, and 1 coming up next week. So I know exactly how much work that's being done. I can sort this data. I can go in and filter the data because this is also a filtering capability. I want to see everything for 03-March. And I go in, I do an update like that, and I can filter all of that data so I see just the March work. Now I must have typed it wrong because that's usually what happens with me. So now I've created a filter in here. And I'll go back to another quarter and come back because it won't stay. So that's a good lesson to learn. Anytime you want to do something like that, the easiest thing to do is just go ahead, copy, sort it, and filter it. In this particular case, I can go in and just select the day and get the values. I don't have anything today. So let's see, filter here. Next week, this year, just for the heck of it. And there's 9 items in here. So that's where I've got the filters in here, and I'll have to go back and rebuild them. On the dashboard, I use that a lot when I'm looking for information by the customer itself. So I'll go in here and I'll select the issue and I look for customer information and pull it through. So depending on the tool that you're using and how it's being used, it gives you a lot of capability to do the work you need to. Now, if you happen to be doing things like on the Issue Hub here again, I'm going to rebuild it again. go back to my paid items. Another thing that's important about the issue hub is that there are certain things that I can do. For example, if I go ahead and look at this goodwill and I say, you know what, we've done this particular issue right here, and I would like to close this one. I can check that box right there, and I can check this box, and I can update it and close the issue by clicking this button. I can change the assignment here. I can change the class. I can change the next action. I can move the required by dates. These capabilities are built within here. They are limited according to your permissions, but it gives me another tool that I can use as a reporting tool to do actions on here. So it means that I can move things around if I need to, so I don't have to continue to go to every issue. So pay attention to these newer features that are in here and look for additional changes that Paul will be mentioning in the next session. So now, what am I doing as far as reporting is concerned? First thing, I'd use a lot of reports that are in the report writer. So I go to the report writer and build most of my reports. I use naming conventions. Is one of the things that Patrick talked about. You see a lot of these, I've got like these little stars and pluses, and these are essentially underlines. There's some special characters that are driving these particular type of reports to the top of the page, because as you can see, I have a long list of reports, especially with professional services in here. So here you see we've used some of those tips and tricks, because here's some reports that Paul and I are no longer using. We've added these in, and we're not ready to get rid of them yet. Well, these are queries actually, but we're not ready to get rid of them yet. But we would like to go ahead and keep them around for a while. And then this one is important, because what I do with this one is this one right here. I go in here and I tend to use it a lot because I want to run the billing line items report. And I'm going to kind of walk through this one a little bit. So I'm going to edit this. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to take the customer prospect out just for right now and out here. So just to be a little safer in here. So we're going to take that information out, and let's see, the subject line is in here now too. Issue subject. I want to take both of those out. Okay. So what I'm doing now is these are the reports. So in this particular case, I'm modifying the query output to make sure that that data is not in there. And then I'm giving you the selected fields. You'll notice that this one is a billing line item. So it's the billing line items plus issues. I expect repeating data in this because it's a combination of the issue record is one line and multiple lines that may be in the billing line items. And then I have product and services that are in there. So I'm going to go next. And I have two filter expressions. I've got a filter expression that's basically date driven. So all I do is I go in here and I edit the existing expression that I've already saved, and I just change the dates. So I'm going to go ahead and do a report, do this all about the month of February. So I'm going to change this over, and I'm going to go back here and select February 28th. And I'm going to save that filter expression. That's the one thing you have to really remember. Yes, Paul's got his hands right here.
Edit your filter expression again. I think you missed a 2. You had a 3. You had 3 1.
Oh, I see a 2 there. Yeah. So here's another thing. All I have to do is do that. I don't have to bring the calendar back up.
A lot of our customers think they've got to use that calendar selection, and you really don't have to.
You don't have to. If you know the format, you can do it. Just like Patrick was talking about. If you know an inactive issue type, you can put it in there as long as you get the formatting correct, and then you're okay. So here I'm using one set of data, and I'm going to make a modification, and I'm going to go back in. And this is kind of a nice tips and trick too. Sometimes you'll create queries that you're building specifically to change the date on. I may have one that's set to run this month, this week, last week. And then I've got a manual one that I don't want to mess up my normal weekly and monthly reporting, but I go in and use it. It's a copy of those reports that I have just gone ahead and cloned, and then gone ahead and created as a manual report that I do want to change the data off of. So I find that to be helpful. The other thing is on the share capability. Make sure if you decide you want to share it. For example, this one is limited to the professional services team. The sales team doesn't need to see this. You know, and the management, most of the managers don't see it. It's mostly Paul and myself. That's all we really need to see this. So that's how we limited this. So here I'm going to finish. I'm going to save and run it. And then of course it's going to dump out all the data. Now, you notice there's about 219 line items in this report, not issues, line items, because it's giving you a row per line item, not per issue. As you can see, there's going to be issue numbers duplicated. There's issue information duplicated until you get over here to things like the billing line item comment. So that one is really a key field for me. Or it could be the time and date stamp of the follow-up, or it could be the actual time and date that the actual line was created. So you want to make sure that when you're using multiple lines like this, you're using some kind of value that is going to give you a uniqueness. So Paul and I use a lot of comments because the comments need to be different because they're done on different dates. Sometimes they're the same, but it's on a different dates, which gives me the date is going to be the unique value or the time and date stamp of creation. So be careful when you're doing that. As he said, you can export this directly out. I can go ahead and look at it in full screen mode, so I can look at the data that way. It just depends on what I'm looking for. Once you build that query, then you build a report. So here's a report. And I go down here and I actually have, here's a manual report. So here's the billing line items weekly manual. So here I'm going to highlight that and run it. And you'll see here that I didn't pick out everything that they needed. I just did quantity. I just picked out a few fields. I didn't need everything. I had a ton of information in there, but I only needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. But I can click in here and go directly into the report or right into the issue and see whatever I need to do. So I say, okay, that's cool. So now let's go to the manual. And then what I'm going to do is I'll show you another one. Here's one I broke up by day. So I grouped it by day because I wanted to see exactly what was going on every day. What billing line items were entered. And it's even grouped by Paul versus Mike. So I can go in and take a look at activity reports. So I can go ahead and say, okay, Taylor is my manager and Paul's manager. This is what Paul and I did day to day to day to day. And we can go in there and say, okay, this is who we work with. This is what we did. We show that information and we're using that as a report that says, okay, this is what our activities were on a particular time and date. And you can see that we can even group this up and say, okay, on this date, I spent 4.5 hours working on issues. The other day I did other things. Now, if I was billing this as a service company, then I could take that same information and bill a company by organization, for example, for the services that I provided. It just depends on how your functionality and how Issuetrak works for you. So, as you can see from the reporting options in here, there are tons of different reports. I get in here and I get financial reports from the finance times. I go in here and I get PSs. Now, here's the scheduling report. This is the scheduling report that we create. So here's a report that runs that I create and run, and it's got a D behind it because I know that is a daily report. And this is a finance monthly report, and the S means it's scheduled. If I come down here and I look at weeklies, these are weekly reports. And then down here, there's more monthlies and more weeklies. These are financial, these are operational, is the difference. For example, I have to run this every week. It's a deferred revenue report. I run this to understand how much revenue that is actually going to be generated by the professional services team on a weekly basis. And I compare that to a spreadsheet that our finance team has. So I take the results of one report out of Issuetrak and I'm using it as a balance and check for the finance department. So it works out nicely where you're taking some of these reports and using them in a basis that's making your financial end more secure, making sure we don't miss anything either on the professional services side or on the financial end. And now we run into problem, we run that back. There's an item missing off the deferred revenue report. Well, the the quick pick issue, the issue's been entered in the issue track. Paul and I may even be doing some service in it, and the finance team it just hasn't entered that data in it. Well, things are off because of that, or it's the opposite. Finance is on the ball, corp site's not. So we have it both ways, and we have to accommodate you. I'm going to show you that report in a couple minutes of what I do and how I use that report. The other thing is, once these reports are created, then I go into the scheduling items. So here are the scheduling items, as you can see. For me, I like to use the schedule names and the report names as being the same. So when I create a report, and here's the scheduling one again, generally the name of the scheduling item is going to be the same name as the schedule report. It makes it easy for me to understand exactly where the source is and what's going to run. So if Patrick has a problem, it makes it a little bit easier for him to track them down. You also see that I've scheduled these weeklies, and this is weekly because I don't really want to run them on Saturdays and Sundays. If you do a daily, it's going to run 7 days a week. If you run a weekly, you can determine what days of the week it runs. So I run Monday through Friday. And then you can go ahead and determine exactly when you would like to run it. The old versions of Issuetraks, if some of you are on older versions, you could not control when they ran. If you were in a cloud environment, they were going to run about 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning. But now you can determine when you like to have them run. And what the problem was, we're talking about East Coast time. So we're running something for a customer in Australia, and it's at 5 a.m. in the morning. Well, it's 5 in the afternoon for them. So we improved this so that you can determine your own schedule of when these reports are going to run, so they're more in line with your work day. I want to run these at 8 a.m. every day. I want these to run at midnight every night. You determine that by changing this run as time on your individual schedules. And that's another thing. And Paul mentioned the recipient's information. Having the ability to change the recipient in here. In some cases, you can add just an email address. So you don't have to have a user in Issuetrak. You can send it to where you need to send it to. You know, a manager who's not in here, or it needs to be some customer, or it depends on what you want to do, because these schedule reports are going to run. If you use the user ID, expect every piece of data that's in that report to be on that export to whoever that customer is. So be careful about doing that, because it's going to be the administrator's view, not a filtered view that you would if you were using a user record. So be careful about that when you're using that option. Understand what's going to be sent to that customer. Okay, so those are some of the tools that I use. The query builders, the ability for you to change the query filters, the ability for you to modify and create those query filters in order to get the data like you want it. Having an expectation of what you want to use that report for in that query. So I'll take that query and I'll build multiple reports off the same query. Or I have a function that I want. So I'm going to kind of go over a couple things now, functionally what I want to do. Let me drag this over, and I'm going to show you a list of weekly reports that I get to help manage our team. You'll notice the dates on this one. This date is Monday, March 1st. So what happens is I have a series of reports that run on Friday the 26th, and a series of reports that run Monday the 1st. What I did in that particular case is I have 2 separate sets of reports. It just depends on how I want that data to go out. For example, the scheduling issues report here. When I run that and I get it scheduled, then it shows you me by sales engineer what things has been scheduled. So Tony and Emma both can get an idea of exactly when these are actually scheduled. And we can send these reports to Tony and Emma so they can see this report. And they can complain that we haven't scheduled something. Because of course, if I'm going to do a schedule report, I have to do an unscheduled report too. So I'll do an unscheduled report that just gives me a list of their customers and shows them exactly what is not scheduled. And they can see what the value is and everything like that. So we pull a bunch of information in here that it's important for the sales team to understand. The outstanding services report. This report goes to the finance team and it also goes to my manager. Because what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at service that has not been completed. And I'm trying to give them an idea of when that revenue is going to hit our P&Ls. So I separate it out according to the expected schedule months and expected schedule time. Now, sometimes I've got some prepaid data and we've got some web forms in here. So we have some other groupings in here that helps us understand. It's even some information in here and some closed items that are in here. So we've got a couple things in here, services that we've expired and we're considering them closed and we may schedule them later on. So we'll hand them out there. But this gives the management team a grouping to understand exactly when revenue is going to hit the P&L. So it helps us on financial planning. That's the purpose of the report. This is the report that I use. And this one is an interesting report. This is a report that tells me of the services that are of all of my outstanding paid services. And I'm looking at exactly how many service dollars we have provided versus how many service dollars we haven't. And we compare it to our financials in order to make sure that everything balances. Well, I get this as the raw form. It ends up like this. Because I take the output, I save it, and I modify it. So you'll see a lot of color in it because this is actually the one I'm going to send over to the financial team. I do calculations on here based off of information from the issue. The issue is giving me this. I do calculations where I've copy pasted essentially formulas from an existing spreadsheet and I bring it over. And same thing for the format at the bottom. This is where I have listings for things that are on, say, let's say that this particular issue right here was not on the deferred revenue report. Well, I'll list it down here and I'll deduct it off of the totals. And then if it's something that's in the deferred revenue report, but not in here, I'll add it to the totals here. So I can use this as a final variance report in order to make sure the two reports balance. And if they're off, then either I've got a problem or the financial team has a problem. And we've got to figure out where it needs to balance. So we balance every week. Is what we do. And I confirm that these items are on a deferred revenue report, just put a tick mark in there. So just because you have a report doesn't mean the report has to stay in its same format. You can go in there and use tips and tricks like this to copy over formulas to use Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you happen to be using, and make that into a very good report for you to use to management. So one of the things here also is like the billing line item summary. So when Paul and I update our data and put things on here, then what happens is then we can go ahead and use a summary report that breaks me down by service on how many hours, and then I separate it between paid, sales, and operations, because that's how I'm billing. Essentially, I am looking at all of my different reporting for this particular team. Forgive me. So you can see how this type of reporting then gives management and give an ability for you to look at the actions of the team in order to understand what's going on. Another set of reports that I use is the monthly service reports. Forgive me for that. This is an Excel spreadsheet that lives outside of Issuetrak. But what I do is I go in every month and I look at some data here. So for example, there's another series of reports. These series of reports are my monthly reports. I get them at the first day of every month. And I take data from these reports and I put them into this spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is divided into a couple segments. For example, the spreadsheet is saying, okay, I'm looking at numbers of issues. Now, this is 2018 data. So I'm letting you see some old data. It gives me the ability to say, these are the services that we provide. These are the goodwill services we provided. These were the operational items that we provide. And I'm going month by month by month. So I know how many issues of each one that I've done in 2018 here. And I break this up by quarter. And I break it up so that management can take a look at exactly what was going on at that period of time. And I can even bring in some information to do some comparison and do some actual chart work if I want to do that. Well, then we look at things in a different way, because remember, one of the things that we're doing on our billing line items is we're adding consultant with type of request, and we're adding hours. So now these are the hours that it took to provide those services for those issues. Now, some of the services provided were not necessarily on issues that were submitted during the month. So it's not a direct correlation in here, because you have some issues like a jumpstart that may last 2 or 3 months. You may have some consultings that are done, it's 2 or 3 months. So you can have some non-correlation of the data, but it's always service rendered in that month period. And you see here, I can break it up the same way and create different formulas in here. And then I bring in data. For example, I take the data that I have here and I bring in capacities. There's a billable hours report where I take the hours that I get from where Paul and I have actually added in the service work, and I put it in here to say, okay, how many hours were available? How many hours did we bill? What's percentages? And I can break down the hours into hours of goodwill service and hours of operation service. And then I can chart that against the information that I have to tell me what's the capacities, how much of the capacities have we learned? Are we at capacity yet? Are we getting to a point where Paul and I are going to be we're billing as many paid hours as we have capacity to use? We need to hire somebody else. So management looks at this to understand what our capacities and what our percentages are for work that needs to be done. So then I can take the information in the other 2 spreadsheets and I can pull it over and create KPI data. So I'll take that and pull it into here and create KPI data. And in some cases, we're doing really well. And in some cases, we're not doing as well. But it lets us focus on where we have problems so that we can look at the problems and try to address them to be better toward both serving customers, which is our main goal, and to providing revenue to the company, which is our other goal. So we have both capabilities in order to do that. Paul, can you still see everything? I can't hear you. Sorry.
You know, I've only been doing this for a couple of years with the Zoom, huh?
Yeah.
You're still going strong. I can still
Okay.
see everything on the report.
I want to make sure because I lost it on one screen, so I just want to make sure.
The focus, your camera's still in focus too. So.
Oh, good. That's a nice thing.
Yeah.
So when we're building all of this together, of course, we have to have a plan. And we have to understand how each one of these are going to interact and what all these reports are going to do. So one thing Paul and I have talked about whenever we talk about reporting is have a purpose to the report that you're trying to build. What's the purpose of the report? What's the data you want to have? What fields of data do you need to grab? What filters do you need? And the biggest thing with that is what time period do you want to use? What type of criteria do you want to use? Because sometimes you want to look at open issues. Sometimes you want to do open during a period. There's 2 different settings in there in a lot of these criteria in order to do that. Always have purpose in mind. What type of output do you want? Do you want a grouped output? Do you want to have just a spreadsheet output? I have done many reports that are nothing more than a re-output of the query that was run. It was just taken it, put into a report, and it just looks just like an Excel spreadsheet. Because my intention on doing that is send the Excel spreadsheet somewhere, and it's going to be used for another report or another tool in order to build something. So we want to be very cognizant of what we want to do with that data. So I want to kind of show you one other thing really quickly. And in case some of you are not aware, this is an email on my scheduling. So this is a daily scheduling email that I receive. It comes in, like I said, about 1 a.m. So it's about 3 hours ago. This is actually today's scheduling email. And this is a Google email. And it shows me an attachment on here where I go ahead and have the attachment. And I download the attachment locally, or I open it in Google Sheets, one of the 2. Usually what I end up doing is I open this one in Google Sheets. I do the scheduling, and I close it because I'm done with it. If I've got one of the weekly reports or one of the monthly reports, I'm going to use the download functionality to download it locally, work on it, and then I'll move it to Google Drive to share it with the rest of the company. So however you decide you want to use these particular emails that come from Issuetrak, this is what they're going to look like. Now, there are some outputs that are going to be HTML reports. If you do an HTML output, you're going to get an HTML report in the email. If you do an attachment like CSV, or if you do an attachment like Excel outputs, they're mostly going to be output files like this and going to be attached. Am I correct on that, Patrick? As I get a big yes.
Yes, you are, Mike.
Yes.
Perfect.
So this, and the way I want you to understand that is because when you share it, you need to understand what that output is going to be for the customer. So who you shared it with. So be aware of that so they understand exactly what's coming in. Okay. I haven't seen any questions. Anybody got any questions for me? I mean, this is kind of an output. I want to really give you an idea of what to do with something. I wanted to show you how now I'm using three separate tools really right now to get all the good reporting outputs. I'm doing that and using especially the report writer to create reports that are important to management, but we're not really 100% created from Issuetrak, but we're created from data from Issuetrak. And I can whip all of this up usually in about the ones that take the biggest manipulation is that deferred revenue report. It takes a lot of manipulation and it takes some time to make sure everything balances. But other than that, those other two reports, like the monthly service reports, it's about 15, 20 minutes. The billing line items takes a little bit more time because again, it's more data validation, but as far as pulling the data over, 15, 20 minutes, I'm done. So about half an hour to an hour, I'm pretty much done with reporting for a month or for a week. So it's because I've got the data and I've got everything formatted outside of Issuetrak. So it's just cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. So it's a little easier to do now. So, okay, I've been talking for a while. It's about 2:30 now, which I wanted to go ahead and make sure that we had time for questions and also to make sure Paul had time to finish this thing up if you're ready to roll.
Yeah, we did have a question about the associated issues field, and I said that I would do a quick show and tell about that in our question and answer period on the very end of the webinar.
Oh, that's a good thing to do.
If anybody else wants a quick show and tell about something, please ask a question about it. Use the Q&A so that we know you want to see something. And I'll do a quick Q&A about it, show and tell about it on the end of today's webinar. Do we need to take a break, or are we ready to get into the new? Well, first off, thank you, Mike. Fantastic look. It is that was a very detailed look at how we use the Issuetrak's reporting tool to dig in and really prove our worth to the rest of the company, and really show what's going on between the two of us, right, for our team to the rest of the company. Okay, so I wanted to be sure before I get into the new stuff, I want to be sure everybody remembers what I showed you in the first 5 minutes of the webinar, right? Now, if anybody right now is going, but I really just wanted step-by-step instructions for creating a report or a query, right? I understand all the rest of the stuff, but I really want that. Well, go to the Help Center, right? And look up the About Report Writer Help Center article. And to get there, you can log into your Issuetrak site. You're going to need to create your query and report anyway, and click the help icon, the circle with the question mark. Can you guys see that? And that takes you to the Help Center. What we're worried about today is the article name is About Report Writer. Right there. All right, that covers not only the best practices, the tips and tricks, but also covers a step-by-step. There's terminology in here. And there's videos, right? So you don't even have to read. You can just look, right? Click on watch the videos. All right. Now, just in case anybody was wondering about that or had wanted to see that and didn't get it, I want to make sure we're not leaving you flat-footed there. And if you ever have questions about reports, please, Patrick's always there. I'll give you his home number. No, call our support team, or support.
No.
No. And
All
also,
right.
also here at support, we're here, we can assist over a remote session. We can walk through and get you the exact data that you need. We'll help you build the query and get more comfortable with actually building the queries. I like to say that queries are going to get the filtered data. The report just makes it look pretty. It's going to count it, going to group it, going to sum it. And that's kind of how I like to explain when I'm first teaching people about this. Is the query is the data you want. The report formats it and makes it look better and easier to present.